Hey everybody, this is Josh Runquist here for Heavy Debriefings, and it's time to get into the 2020s. Well, at least 3 years of the 2020s, starting it off with the top 10 albums of 2020. 3 episodes left of this whole 34-part series. Let's get right into it. Coming in at number 10 is Mr. Bungle with The Raging Wrath of the Easter Demo. I love that song. I love this album. And it's so drastically different than what we knew Mr. Bungle for. Even though this is technically the first release from Mr. Bungle, it was re-recorded and didn't see the light of day till 2020. And of course, Mr. Bungle went on to become one of the most avant-garde, experimental, messed up bands in the rock and metal genres, and inspired so many bands to do the exact same thing, but with their own unique twist to it. This album really doesn't have that much as far as that absurd quirkiness. It is much more of that thrash metal, crossover thrash, hardcore punk, and a little revisionist for 2020. And honestly, it's for the best. With an all-star lineup, I mean, you got Scott Ian of Anthrax, you got Dave Lombardo of Slayer. You really want to make this as thrash as possible, you get those guys a part of it. And it's been great to see Mr. Bungle back ever since, and they're slowly starting to incorporate some of the older material, or at least to us, newer, or at least older to us material. See how confusing it can get? But yeah, this is the very first release from Mr. Bungle that barely saw the light of day, and it's the newest album, and potentially the last album Mr. Bungle does, and if it is, I'm quite alright with that because they went out on one of the best notes ever. And honestly, without question, and since it's been 3 years now, I can finally say it. This is one of my favorite thrash metal albums of all time. It's just that good. And if you don't believe me, if you don't believe Mike Patton and company are capable of writing one of the best thrash metal albums of all time, when some of the most legendary names in thrash are still around, you haven't checked out this album. Seriously, do yourself a favor, check this thing out. Coming in at number 9 is My Dying Bride with The Ghost of Orion, the latest album from the band, and a very distinct twist in the band's formula. Whereas before, they would always really focus on the death doom vocals, and it makes so much sense to do that. They're one of the pioneers of the death doom genre, or at least the way that we know it. But on this particular album, Aaron decided to incorporate more of the clean vocals more than anything else. It's the predominant vocal style on the album. There's very little growls on here, and that can dissuade some people. For me, I think it makes it even more enjoyable. And especially with what's talked about on this album, like almost losing his daughter in the song Tired of Tears, it hits so much harder when it's clean vocals. This is the kind of album that you put on when you hear people say Adele is the saddest singer. All you have to do is just listen to Aaron Stainthorpe here, and yeah, it kind of makes Adele sound just like a little top 40 pop singer. It's just that devastating. But seriously, folks, My Dying Bride, one of my favorite bands, one of my favorite death doom bands, funeral doom, gothic metal. They hit it so perfectly here, and their latest album, The Ghost of Orion, even though it's been 3 years now, still holds up so very well, and I can't wait to see what they do next. Coming in at number 8 is Dark Tranquillity with their latest album, Moment. And this is an album that's kind of a changing of the guard, where 2 new guitarists came in, and after this, the rhythm section quit the band. Unfortunate, but that is the way things work out sometimes, but I really do love the result of when things were together on this album because they wrote some of their catchiest songs, some of their best songs. The vocals on here are fantastic. I love that it's not just all screams and growls, that he's using a lot more of his clean vocals, which I think is such a great approach. And it does have a little more of a gothic feel than they had before. I mean, of course, they have always had the melodeath feel behind them. You can't lose that when you're one of the pioneers of that style. But just incorporating a little more, like when it comes into keyboards, adding a little more goth atmosphere, I think it really worked out for the band, and I'm so curious to see what's going to be happening next. Especially since the band had to have a couple new lineups before, during, and after moments. And of course, with the Halo effect also going on, I'm very curious to see what Dark Tranquillity is going to be coming up with next. And if it's anywhere near as good as Moment, you know I'm on board. Coming in at number 7 is the sophomore album from Dawn of Solace, Waves. And this is the first album the band has put out since, well, 14 years prior to that. So, 17 years since the debut album nowadays. But it's incredible to see the rejuvenation that came into this band, and seeing how they went from more of that melodic death metal sound on the first album, which really started to incorporate more into his other band, Wolfheart, which of course is top priority nowadays. But he is focusing back on his other bands and being able to show his musical prowess. With Before the Dawn, it has more of that melodic death metal sound as well, but it also takes it more of a hard rock approach as well. With Dawn of Solace, it takes all of the doom and gothic atmosphere and throws it together here, where the vocals are all clean. It's just beautiful, catchy music. And while I've seen a lot of people say that the follow-up album is better than Waves, I'm one of those people that feels that Waves is the better album. It struck me much harder. The choruses hit me much harder. I love the production on this thing. The combination of everything that's going on here just feels perfect. It's that great, dark, gothy feel without getting in the screams and growls. And sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes it's all you want as well. And the fact that this band is still going strong, despite Wolfheart going strong, despite Before the Dawn coming back, so many great things that are going on in that finished melodeath mind of his. But Dawn of Solace is a fantastic band, and I highly recommend that you check out Waves if this is up your alley. Coming in at number 6 is Enslaved with their latest album, Utgard. And I'm a little surprised by the online reception to this album as of late, especially with the brand new album being out. I've seen a lot of people say that this album is not as good, which I couldn't disagree with more. I think this one is better than the brand new album. I love everything about this album. There's a lot more clean vocals that are going on. The music feels so much more inspired and catchy, where I guess some people really do love the more psychedelic, progressive kind of feel that Enslaved especially does on the brand new album. But this one is more streamlined. I guess it is kind of like In Times, where they focused a little more on the catchy side, a little more on the clean vocals, making sure that the songs were all catchy and enjoyable no matter your style of progressive black metal. And that's what Utgard really feels like to me. I mean, it still has those great Enslaved moments, just much, much catchier. But maybe that's just me. I mean, how can you not listen to Homebound and think that's not one of their best songs that they've ever made? But then again, maybe that's just me. But if you're not so deep into the psychedelic progressive black metal that Enslaved does, you might want to give this one a shot before you start venturing into those territories. This is a fantastic album to be able to start off the band with, and if you like it catchy, there's albums for that for you. If you like the more black metal sides that go on throughout here, oh, there's definitely there. And the progressive side, of course, that's going to be there. It's a great starter Enslaved album if you've never checked them out before. Coming in at number 5 is the latest album from Paradise Lost, Obsidian. And this is another example, much like I talked about with Enslaved, a perfect starter album if you've never checked out Paradise Lost before. It's got the death doom stuff that they were known for and still known for. It's got the gothic rock and gothic metal side that they became really known for. And in the middle era, they still have some alternative goth feel that goes on, which they like so much, they actually started a new off-branch of this band, Host, which really does focus on the late 90s, early 2000s Paradise Lost, which really focused on that alternative, industrial, gothic rock sound. Pretty sure they were inspired to do this because of this. But yeah, it's got a little bit of everything, and I can understand how some people might feel it's a little jarring because it doesn't have a consistent sound. But that's also what I love about it, because it shows all sides of the band from their earliest days to what they're doing now, all with brand new material. And if you like a particular song or style, they have albums that match that flawlessly. So yeah, if you've never checked out Paradise Lost, if you haven't checked them out worth as many times as I've talked about them on this list, in this whole series, you need to check them out. And you know what? Start with Obsidian. I think it's a great start. Coming in at number 4 is Falconer with From a Dying Ember, the final album in the Falconer discography, and it's the perfect closer to be able to go out on. Everything about this album was written to be the best material possible, because they all knew going in that this was going to be the final album. And if you look at the initials of the album From a Dying Ember, it's F-A-D-E. Fade. And that's exactly what the band wanted to do. They wanted to fade away. I was fortunate enough to see their very last show at Prague Power 2015, and I was so curious if they were going to be putting out another album, as the album that they were on tour for was such a fantastic album that they could have ended everything there. But they decided they wanted to continue on for at least one more album, and I'm so glad that they did. It feels like they captured every era of the band, even hinting at previous material before Falconer, which is why I added the almost black metal part to the For Fanzo section, because there's some moments on this album that hit near black metal territory, which you really would not expect in this style. But if you love that very strong theatrical power metal with some of the strongest vocals and very distinct vocals in power metal, that folk metal sound that they really started to incorporate and make their own, combining that together, it is my favorite Falconer album, and I dare say it, in fact I will say it, it is the best Falconer album. And if you've never checked out the band before, again, like I've said for the previous albums on this part of the series, this is a fantastic starter album. All you need to do is go backwards if you enjoy what you hear. Seriously, even though they're gone, the music is still here. Check out Falconer. Coming in at number 3 is Silent Skies with Satellites, the debut album from this band featuring Tom England of Evergrey and Vikram Shankar of Redemption, which Tom England also happens to sing in. In fact, that's how they met and decided to put this project together. And they were already working on their third album. This debut album, I feel, is probably the most sincere because it's that first initial hit. And maybe Nectar is better than Satellites, but I really love the debut album so much. It just hits that dark, mournful moments that I love so much from Tom England's vocals. The emotional, orchestral, symphonic sound that Vikram Shankar really knows how to put together, whether he's just playing piano, whether he's just adding ambient percussion, whether he's adding orchestral feels in any of his music. He really knows how to put it together for Silent Skies. It's dark, it's sad, and again, kind of just like I talked about with Adele earlier, like Silent Skies just makes that look like pop rock in comparison. This is so sad and mournful and everything that I love. Vikram and Tom are a match made in musical heaven. And if you've never checked this out before, it is the perfect chill out music that could bring a tear to your eye. And sometimes that's what we really need. I sincerely think that you need to check out Satellites if it sounds like it's up your alley. And if you want something a little more vast, not that this isn't vast, but just a little bit more vast, go and check out the sophomore album Nectar. And then stay on the boat because the third album is coming out soon and I can't wait to see what's coming up next from these two. Coming in at number 2 is Valbard with When I Die, Will I Get Better? And this is one of the most emotionally wrecking albums that I've heard from a perspective that I will never understand. Let me explain, it'll make sense. With Svalbard, this really does hit moments, especially lyrically, that just hit you so very hard when it comes to image and beauty and the way men treat women and clickbait and all of these horrible things that women have to go through just to survive every day. And of course the mental breakdowns that come with that. Of course some of the things you can very much relate to, I mean the mental health struggles that anyone can face, but especially hearing it from such a vulnerable state, it just makes these songs so much more devastating. And the musical landscape that goes along with it when it hits so very, very hard, whether it goes into more of the almost emo hardcore kind of feeling, whether it goes into the more faster hardcore punk, whether it goes into black gaze and black metal territory. which they really start to explore on this album. It's an amazing combination, and it really hits that whirlwind of emotions that whether you can personally connect to it, or you know someone that can personally connect to it, or you've seen it from the outside in some way, shape, or form, it's bound to bring a tear to your eye. Seriously, read the lyrics to this album while it's going on, and you can just hear the devastation that goes along with it. This is arguably, at least nowadays, my most listened to album of 2020, and for good reason. The music is so good, the lyrics are so good, and if you want something that really makes you think about the world that we live in for this 21st century culture, this is an album you need to listen to immediately. And finally, my favorite album of 2020 is, of course, Carnation with their brand new album, Leaves of Yesteryear. Well, not brand new, it's 3 years old now, but their latest album. And I didn't think we were ever going to get brand new Carnation music. And since this time, there's been this album, they've done a brand new epic, and they might even have some new music in the works. I know they've been doing a lot more live shows now. I really hope that this won't be the last album. I really hope that they'll continue on. But this album almost doesn't fit the mold, as it's 5 songs, one is a re-recording, which is a 15-minute epic, and they also do a Black Sabbath cover on here, but I'm still counting it, damn it, because it is a new studio album, and I'm just happy to have it included here. It counts as a real studio album, so there you go. Seeing everything that Carnation has learned over the years, in past, present, and probably future bands as well, too, Carnation just takes that perfect progressive metal, doom metal, gothic metal, not so much of the black metal sides anymore, but they just combine all of those 3 ingredients together to create some of the most emotionally driven prog that's going on in the 2020s nowadays. Of course, everyone in this band is absolutely magnificent at what they do with their musical creations, and having the chance to be able to see my favorite song, my favorite album of all time, Light of Day, Day of Darkness at Prog Power USA 2016, was one of my favorite musical highlights of all time. Even more so than seeing Devin Townsend and Annika van Giersbergen at the very same show. So that really says something, doesn't it? I really want to be able to see these guys again doing some material off this album, or off of anything that's not Light of Day, Day of Darkness, as that's my only reference. But this music is so filled with dark prog, dark doom, dark gothic metal, and it just hits in all the right ways. Lyrically, it packs such a punch. Musically, you can feel that punch hit you even harder. I love Carnation, and if you want to find out why, this is the album that I feel like you should start with, and then go backwards from here and see what connects with you. And there you go, folks, my top 10 albums of 2020. What did you think? Do you want to crap on me for my own personal opinion? Did I pick the wrong albums? Did I pick the right albums? Did you find a new discovery here? What did you think of this video? Let me know down below. And of course, like, comment, share, subscribe, all of that stuff, and continue to help this channel grow more and more, so more people who are interested in this get to check it out. Now, until my top 10 albums of 2021, another top 10 list that I do, band interview, album review, or anything else that I do here on the Heavy Debriefings YouTube channel. For Heavy Debriefings, this is Josh Runquist saying, see ya.